Why do you think it's so hard for Americans to enter F1?
Ah, that's really the best question I've ever gotten on this. I wish I could answer it. Um, it's yeah, I think that when you look at the rules in the sense that the FIA has in place for the championship, there's at this point agreed that there could be room for 12 teams, which would mean 24 cars on the grid. Um, they have 10 good teams, obviously. And uh, the only way that I would reason is that going forward with more races on the calendar, which is it's quite the task
Yeah,
uh, uh, for all the teams to cross continents and so forth, and to protect the grid, to some degree by having 11 or 12 cars, on the grid, I think is a good insurance in
yeah,
itself. That's the only way that I can see. And as a company, which would be the Liberty Media, for instance, to have insurance that you have a full grid, it's good for the organizers, of course, and it's a big investment in the business, with another team. So that's what that's what we're trying to bring to the party here.
yeah,
I don't see any negatives, and also it's clear that we have the biggest auto manufacturer in the United States uh, ready to join. They already have committed publicly that they will be joining us. Um, all along, we've been told by both sides, the FIA and the Liberty Media, you bring a manufacturer and you will be accepted. So that's where we are at the moment, but still waiting for an official green light. That's
yeah.
the only way I can answer that.
That kind of does jump ahead to one of the questions I had, which is if Andretti Global gets to successfully enter the grid, would they be based in America with General Motors, like the engineering team and all of that, or would they end up being in the UK, similar to how like all of the F1 teams are engineering wise?
Well, I think this already has been explained that there will be a main operation in the United States to be able to call it a true American team.
Mm-hmm.
But for logistical reasons, there will be an operation in the UK to be able to easily move around, and also I think to be able to arm yourself with the current talents in Formula One, which exist basically in the main hubs. Like you get NASCAR, you want to be in North Carolina. You want in IndyCar, you want to be in Indiana, and
Yeah.
the Formula One, basically the UK is the biggest hub for that. So you have to be realistic about that. And so, yeah, that's really the plan that's in place, and it makes sense.
Yeah. I figured as such, but I mean, as you know, hope springs eternal for America to have it purely based in the good old United States.
Thank you
Um,
very much. Thank you very much about that.
yeah. Um, but so you were famously quoted saying that the only thing missing in F1 is an American. And now there is an American on the grid. There's Logan Sargent because he's from Florida. What do you envision for his career as the only US driver on the grid right now as a former US F1 driver?
Well, that's wonderful. That's embraced, and it should be, by all of us. It's just that I think the comment that I made was what is not existing at the moment is a full American team with at least one American driver. That's all. But the drivers obviously are the important part, in my opinion, because I am one.
Yeah.
And to be able to represent their country. But since there's been so much increased interest in the United States in Formula One, which is phenomenal. It's a great thing for the sport. Why not have the U.S. officially represented in both ways, team and driver? And, I always say that Formula One is the Olympics of motorsports because it's so international. It's purely international. And so there's that sense of pride to have your country represented officially. I know that how much, it's a feather in any driver's cap, to win their home Grand Prix. It's, I know I'm fortunate, I got to throw this in. Fortunate I've been in the same year in 1977, I won the home Grand Prix and also my native Grand Prix in the same year. And, we're looking back, doesn't get any better than that from a personal satisfaction. All of this plays, if you will. And that's why, again, Michael and his partners, they're so eager to participate and be a part of this world of motorsports. And so I'm proud of that. Obviously, I'm trying to help everywhere I can, and cheer them on.
Yeah, I think personally for me, because I've been watching F1 since I was 10 or 11. I think my goal has still been to see an American team with a full both drivers as the Americans. So we're still holding up hope for that. So I got really excited when I started reading about Andretti Global's bid to enter. So with your experience in F1 and just the racing world in general, what is the economic impact of the sport now compared to when you were racing in 1977?
Well, Sam, things evolve, and it changed dramatically. I remember that some of the disciplines, give you, for instance, in the early 90s, IndyCar was supreme around the world. As a matter of fact, they were the envy of Formula One. And even from a standpoint of drivers' potential earnings and so forth. And all of a sudden, Bernie Ecclestone changed all that, by acquiring world TV rights and all that sort of thing. And he has really brought so much to Formula One, in that respect that, right now they're the ones that they're the 900-pound gorilla, if you will, in the world of motorsports. And that's a wonderful thing. And so again, as far as the financial side, right now, as I say, because of the interest that we have seen, grow, and the attendance that, some of these venues are experiencing is unprecedented. I mean, it's helped tremendously. Look at the attendance we've had at COTA there in Austin the last couple of years, just phenomenal. And the first event in Miami, and now look at Vegas, they just opened a couple of months ago, the tickets for next year, they're already sold out. Is that awesome or what? So let's feed this bubble. Punk, by feeding this bubble, I mean, the U.S. has really come to the task, and as a fan base, and to have a full-fledged U.S. team, Formula One, I hope they embrace that. I really do.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
I mean, it's been fantastic to, first of all, because I am based in Austin, it's been fantastic to have the racetrack in my backyard. And now seeing both Vegas and Miami, maybe we'll even get a fourth track eventually, who knows? But the explosion of F1 and just motorsports in general in the US has been fantastic to watch over the last decade. But speaking of Indy, what do you think would help Americans kind of not convert per se, but kind of transition from being solely fans of Indy and the NASCAR realm and to come over to F1? Because you had said earlier that it was Indy used to be the envy of F1.
Well, let's put it this way. I think as a national series like IndyCar and NASCAR, we're benefiting on that, in this country. It's the only country on the planet, I think, that from a driver standpoint, you could have a totally satisfying career just by staying here.
Yeah.
And each one has its own identity, its own fan base and whatever. And Formula One is just in another aspect, it's just it's got the more of the fully international flavor. I think as I said earlier, somewhere in the early 90s, IndyCar had several international events which were really popular, and from that standpoint, I think it was kind of had the reach that was almost equal to Formula One, but Formula One has superseded that, and we can keep it that way. I mean, the U.S. is very happy with the series that they have now. You have IMSA, which is obviously the sports prototypes. Long distance racing, which is it's strong because it has a tremendous TV package. And you have IndyCar, which has its own personality and tradition, and then you have NASCAR, which is the same thing. It's been around and they have a solid fan base. So I think the whole thing is compartmentalized okay now. I don't think each side obviously trying to do their very best to continue to maintain and increase interest, but the sport in general, I like to say, is our motorsports is at a good place in the world, and the U.S. is probably enjoying the largest piece of the pie, if you will, because of these other series that it has. But it'd be great to see that especially on the IndyCar side, which from the technical and ability of the driver standpoint parallels the open wheel cars of Formula One. It'd be nice to be more of an open door between that and some American drivers, who get an opportunity and earn a position in some of the Formula One teams. I think that probably would be beneficial to both sides. That's all I can say. The U.S. is a beautiful, great, big country that obviously, even on the commercial side, the sponsors, the large companies are global anyway, so to have more the American side participating, I think would probably lure some of these companies to invest, in more in Formula One. So overall, I don't see any negative. It's all positives, if we do the job right, if we, stop thinking just of ourselves, but look at the big picture.
Yeah, I mean, the U.S., as you stated, has the biggest footprint when it comes to motorsport, not just F1, but just in general. And I think it would be really interesting to see, because I know there are some like NASCAR purists and F1 purists. And I think it'd be really intriguing to see those two overlap, especially because I think a way to streamline Americans into F1 would be to allow how in F2 when you achieve enough super license points, you can then enter into F1. If they did the same for Indy 500, I think it would make that transition much, much easier and more accessible to American drivers as a whole.
Well, it's very true. Like you said, you just mentioned something about the super license and so forth. And I think there's some movement in the direction of why not, which has been in the past, be able to earn some points toward a super license from on the IndyCar series, because there's some similarity in technical skills for a driver, on both sides. So yeah, and all of these things I think would play well in the big picture, as I said. And the other thing that I think is clear, and it's been the objective of Michael's team, then to even field Formula 2 and possibly Formula 3 series, to be able to have the opportunity for some of easier opportunity for some of the American drivers, maybe to just be involved in that farm system, over there, to be better prepared for Formula 1. So, Michael's team is willing to go in there with both feet, that a full investment, and be serious and looking at the long term.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it once and I'll say it a million times. I think if Andretti Global is able to get into F1, I think it would truly pick up the grid in a very interesting way, for both the sport as a whole, but for America's footprint in general. It's kind of, speaking of which, there's been a lot of complaints, so to speak, from a lot of the F1 teams in the concept of Andretti Global's entrance into F1. And they stated a lot of the same criticism is that each team will get less of a share as there are more teams on the grid. So by increasing the amount of drivers, each team will receive less at the end of the year. As someone who has seen the evolution of motorsport in general, do you believe that money is the only reason that the other teams might be hesitant to allow a newcomer in?
Well, there's so many ways of looking at this, but the fact that to be able to enter, the fee is, pretty astronomical. It's 200 million to be, divided among all the other teams. And when you look at the long term, I mean, again, I think every team, they have to look at the big picture, what that does. I mean, if you bring something to the party that obviously brings more interest, potentially, even some sponsorship, everybody ultimately benefits from that. So in the long run, there's no way that anybody would financially suffer by having, another team and another manufacturer involved, and the opportunities that brings to the party. So again, it's you can argue this thing until the cows come home, but the reality is that it's a positive side for the sport overall. You got to look at that. I mean, ultimately, if you're in it for the long term and everything else, this is growth. There's nothing wrong with growth, solid and pure investment. There's no argument with that part.
No, and I think the scariest part always when it comes to growth, regardless of motorsport or otherwise, is that growth is painful at start. So any kind of change is one that can typically be seen as negative on first blush.
Well, you can choose to be negative or positive. I choose to be positive.
I too choose to be positive. But so, as you had mentioned, as how you won both the US and your home Grand Prix in '77, what do you think is the perfect storm for an American to do something similar to what you did now in 2023 with even more tracks on the grid?
Well, it's to have the national anthem played at the end of the race on the top step. Let's face it. I mean, it's all about results. You can talk and hope, but it's about bring results, and everything else, will fall into place. And that's the objective of everyone involved, no question. And like we said, we have a Logan Sargent now with with the Williams team, and we wish him absolutely and sincerely all the very best, no question. And I hope that he wishes us the very best, to be a competitor of his, and then maybe someday he could even possibly drive for us.